Hello everybody, it's Friday night. Tonight we're gonna be doing some farmhouse. I absolutely love farmhouse. I haven't done farmhouse for quite a while. I've been doing so many bright colors lately that what feeds my soul is farmhouse furniture. So I am gonna be doing this. Look at, this is all natural wood. I purchased this piece, got it for a steal. It's an old washstand. And look at, no finish on it. I didn't have to sand it or nothing. It came this way. It's an old washstand. And by the way, if you're just jumping on, my name is Amy. I'm with AJ's Vintage Designs, and I am a brand ambassador here at Dixie Belle Paints. But tonight we're gonna be using a mix of paint, which I'm doing barn red, rustic red. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to be blending voodoo gel stains with some paints at the same time so we can get a real weathered look. I have this pot that I got at the Goodwill. Only paid $2.99 for it, but this is my inspiration. So I want to do the reds. I want to be able to see some wood grains through here. So this was my inspiration. And we're going to be using a lot of water on this. So you can see right here, see how pretty this is, just like this. This is a mix of Tobacco Road and the Black Magic. I was trying to think of the other color. Those two kind of blended together. Look at how pretty this is all by itself. And that's just one coat. And so I'm gonna, since this is dry, we're gonna be painting on this in a second. Let me do the other side so you can see how I put it on. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's do the voodoo gel stain on this side, and then we can go to the other side. Now, I got my little trays here, and I'm gonna show you something. Let me get out my two colors. I'm using Tobacco Road. Actually, I got enough in there. Oh, enough in there. And I'm gonna be using Black Magic. I'm gonna be putting these on, and I'm not gonna put them in each other. I'm going to show you on my plate. You got to shake them up really well because the pigments do separate from the water. If you don't shake them and you squirt them out, it's going to come out almost straight water. So, okay, let me show you. I suppose my brushes are inside. Here we go. Okay, so on my tray, I put my colors side by side. And real quick, what I like to do is, since this is raw wood and it's really thirsty, I want to open the fibers of the wood. And usually on raw wood, when you put water on it, you'll get that little prickly feeling. That's like popping the grain. It'll pop the grain. So I like to put water on my piece first. I like to mist it down before I use the voodoo gel stain. Personal preference. But whenever I've ever used the voodoo gel stain, it's a water-based gel stain. I will just mist my piece down. This is really thirsty. That just opens up those fibers, and it's going to take in the stain nicely. And then I get more of an even finish. If I use water on this, I do get a more even finish when it comes to applying my gel stain. Now you can see I have my colors separated. I'm going to dip my brush in between the two of them. So I've got brown on one side and black on the other. And I'm just going to, if your stain doesn't move, you can add more water. So I am going to just, see these like streaks? I'm gonna work them in. And if you wanna lighten it or if you wanna smooth it out, you can mix it with some more water because it's water-based. You can move it along a little bit easier. I should be on the other side of this, but well. Okay, and because I want the streaks. I don't know if you can see the streaks. I want the brown, the black. I don't want it to be one color. I don't want to mix these together to get like an espresso. I want the colors to stay separate, so it's kind of streaky. So I'm dipping my brush half in each color, and going back and forth, and just wiping them on. And I'm using a Dixie Belle synthetic brush. I'm using the flat small. You can use any of the brushes, but I'm just using the synthetic. This cleans out of your brushes very nicely. So you just go back and forth and kind of blend those together. Because I don't want one solid color. I want variations of color. Because this is an old piece and I want it to look old. So once again, dipping half my brush in black and half in brown. And this is already dry. I can tell it already drank up that water. Okay. You don't have to be neat with this because like I said, I'm going to be adding the paint right over it. Okay, but I'm just trying to deepen up the color. And I'm putting that water on there so it opens the grains and it really welcomes that stain in there. And I don't want it nice and uniform, so I'm not completely blending it out. I want variations of color. See how it's darker in areas and lighter in areas? That's what I want. Okay, but this is so thirsty. Look at, this is dry. This is dry already. Okay, so if you're doing like a large countertop or a large piece of furniture and you're doing this, the voodoo gel stain, having water nearby is great, because if I would stop, let me stop real quick. If I would stop and I'd have a streak and I'd want to even that out, since this water base is so easy to work with, I can mist it with some water and I can get rid of any stop and start marks. So you might find that if you're working on a dry table and you put your stain on and then you look at your table and you're like, ugh, part of it is dark and part of it is light. The wood took it differently. That's why I missed it. I just did butcher block countertops, and I misted the countertops just so that everything was uniform, everything was even, it got absorbed the same. The water just allows that wood to kind of welcome it. Now you might get, especially with raw wood, adding the water, you might get, it's that fuzzy, prickly feeling. When it dries, you don't, not when it's wet, but when it's completely dries, and if I have that prickly feeling, or that it's just like, it feels like there's like hair growing, it's like prickly, I would take a 220 grit sandpaper or higher, and I would just gently wipe across the piece. That will knock off all those little fibers that are sticking up from the water. So, I'm gonna spray this down again. And if it's dry, one thing I like about the water too is if it's dry and you're trying to apply the stain, some areas are, might not be as dry as others, and it might grab the stain differently. So by mixing it with water, I have a little bit of control over the absorption. Let me put you down a little bit. The absorption of the stain. So I always, whenever I use the voodoo gel stain, and it's just personal preference, not everybody does this, but I personally like to spray my piece down with water. Allows me to control the absorption or the consistency of the stain. Everything's kind of getting grabbed equally now. Like I said, here's a dry area up here. Sometimes when you have a dry area and you apply your stain directly over it, it's gonna want to grab more in some areas than in others. See how I'm having to work this? And I still don't have it in there yet? You really gotta work it. So by me misting it first, it welcomes the stain. It doesn't have to be perfect, because like I said, I'm doing the barn red over it. Okay, and I'll be able to go right back over this in just a minute. I can actually go over this while it's wet. But since the other side's dry, I want them to be consistent or the same. I am going to do the same process to both sides. Okay, so there we go. Like magic, this side is dry. Now I'm going to take my rustic red and my barn red. See how they're slightly different? Take my lid off of both of them. And I'm gonna be working with a very damp brush. Very damp brush. And I'm also going to keep my stain brush handy, because I'm also gonna be incorporating the stain back in it as well. Okay, let me get my other brush. Okay. I'm working with all flat smalls. Okay, I gotta sit on my rear end. My foot's going to sleep. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna mist my brush. It's already a little bit damp because I washed it this morning. Okay, and then I'm going to dip into my rustic red, very little. I'm even gonna spray my rustic red. And spray my piece because I don't want a strong color. Okay, and so I'm gonna work from the top, and I'm just slightly dragging it down. Put most of my paint towards the top, and I'm just gonna keep working it down until I run out of any paint on my brush. So it gets lighter as we go. Okay, and then I'm gonna come back in with my half, this is my voodoo gel stain, half in the Black Magic and half in the Tobacco Road, and I'm gonna drag it right on top. And the water is keeping it more translucent. So I'm just running my voodoo gel stain right over my paint. See how, I don't know if you can see it, see how it's dark right there and you're getting some dark lines? I don't want this to look like solid paint. I want it to look like it's kind of worn away. So I'm gonna go back into my voodoo gel stain, mist it with some water, and kind of drag those colors down. And I'm very, very light-handed. I'm just pulling it through that rustic red. And I don't know if you, so I want this to look really aged, and I do like the red. Let me do this section here, and then we're gonna work up from the bottom. I'll do the section here going in this direction. You wanna go with the grains because you want it to look natural. I dipped into the wrong red. I wanted barn red. Maybe I did dip in barn red. We'll find out in just a second. You can't make a mistake with this. Okay, I'm coming in from the sides. You see my brush? Yeah, I'm gonna go back into the, I'm going back into the barn red. Going back to the barn red, and I'll go over that rustic red. I wanted it barn red at the top, so I wanna stick with my plan. Okay, now that is way too bright. See over here? That is way too bright. So I'm gonna mix it with some water. I'm gonna turn it into like a wash. I'm gonna pull it down from here too, because I need to brighten that up. Okay, I'm pulling those colors across. I've got it so thin and I'm using so much water that I've got it treated almost like it's a wash. And if you don't know what a wash is when you use paint, 50% water, 50% paint usually, and you just wipe it across. So it's very translucent with your hue of color. Okay, so I got the red going across there. Now I want to add in back in my Voodoo Gel Stain. Dipping once again, half in the black and half in the brown. Just a little bit, spraying it with some more water because I'm using a lot of water on this. And I'm gonna pull it in. I got a little bit too much stain on here, that's okay. I'm gonna pull it through because I'm not gonna be using any waxes on this piece. I'm using the Voodoo Gel Stain to bring me my dark colors. And this is Voodoo Gel Stain in Black Magic and Tobacco Road. Dip again, and offload it, and pull it into the sides. And I'll show you close up so you can see what it looks like. And now you don't have to wipe it back. Now this wood is really thirsty, so it's soaking it up great. But if you would happen to put too much on there, you can take a rag and wipe it across if you need to. Right, this is just, I didn't re-dip into paint. I'm just using my barn red brush just to wipe those colors across. Okay, so see how it's gonna look aged? Okay, let me do my barn red over here. Dip a little bit in the paint. I'm dipping, there's hardly anything on there. And then I'm gonna, once again, spray it with water. I can even spray my piece with water if I want to. And I'm using it like a wash, working the color from the top down until I don't have anything on my brush anymore. See I'm doing that? I want this to look like it's been sitting out and just getting weathered for a long time.
Seal with hemp or mama?
Huh?
Seal with hemp or mama?
I'm gonna be sealing this with hemp, but you can seal it with either. Okay, so now that I've got that barn red on there, I go back to my Voodoo Gel Stain, Black Magic and Tobacco Road. Just very little on my, there's very little on my brush. And now I'm gonna drag it from the top, because I want the darkest at the top. And then gently drag it down. Having half my brush in one color and other half in another is gonna give me that little streaky effect. Since I want the black and the gray, I don't know if you can see the streaky effect. That is from, I'm not mixing my colors. I'm dipping half my brush in black and half my brush in brown. So that is what's gonna give me that streaky, aged look. Let's do these center panels and then we'll come up with the barn red from the bottom. Okay, so I can mist this with water. And let's go back to my barn red again. So I'm just gonna pull this down, get that up in those cracks up there. And I've got enough water on my brush and enough water on my piece from being misted. I'm not getting a huge coat of paint on here. I just want it to work like a strong wash. Okay, gotta get up in those corners. Work it in there. Okay, even that looks good, but I don't want it that red. Use my finger to wipe that off. I got it up there. Okay, let me get a little more right there. Okay, now get it all off my brush. I may as well do the other side too. I've got very little paint on my brush. You could do this project with your leftover paint. goes on too heavy, then you just spritz it with a little bit of water, water that paint down. It's very similar to painting fabric. And it doesn't have to be exact everywhere. Like I said, this is gonna look like it's been weathered. I don't want a consistent color. This is so forgiving to do too. I'm using lots of water. If I get it on too strong or too heavy in an area, I don't have to worry about it. Just spray it with some water, it'll light that up. Okay, so now let's start from the bottom and let's work up. Let's start at the bottom and let's put in some of the rustic red now. Okay, I'm gonna get a new brush, another flat small, and I'm gonna dip into my rustic red. That's way too much paint. I'm gonna offload it. I'm gonna mix it with some water so that it acts like a wash. Having the rustic red come up from the bottom, think about it over time. These colors are very close, yes. But over time, this area up at top is gonna be brighter because it's being protected by the top. The sun isn't probably hitting it as much. Down here is gonna be, it's getting beat by the sun. So this is gonna be a little bit deeper. So my brush is very wet. I'm just putting a little bit of that rustic red on there. Okay, so I'm just gonna put in some streaks of working my way up till I have nothing left on my brush. I've got water on my brush. So just working my way up from the bottom. And oops, that bottom is so dry, it doesn't even want to take the water. There we go. Okay. And so that's the rustic red at the bottom, and I'm going to be adding the voodoo back into it. I'm just repeating the process over and over I stained it first. I'm putting in my slight wash of reds, and then I'm coming in right away with my stains again and just dragging those colors. Like I said, if I got it too heavy, like right there, I've got a lot of stain on there. I'm gonna come back with my red because I got too much stain. These are all water-based products, so they work well together. Okay, back to my, oopsie. I gotta pay attention to my red brushes. Back to my rustic red. I put too much stain on there. I don't like how brown it is. So now I'm just kind of almost like dry brushing my rustic red back in. So I got some streaks going on. I want to be able to see that black, that brown, that red, so it looks really aged. And this area right here is dry. That's why it's looking a little bit different in color. But this is like by far, like the easiest process because there's no doing it wrong. Okay, let's do the center section right here. Now I'm gonna do let's do the bottom first. I'm gonna do the rustic red at the bottom. Okay. See how light that red is? Because I've got I have water on my piece. I've got the paint on my brush, but I'm using very little paint. You can use Dixie Belle's paints as a stain too. If you want a red stain, you can just water down your paints and you can use it as a stain on raw wood as well. There's so many options. I'm gonna get a little bit more red on there. Okay, back into my Tobacco Road. Tobacco Road and Black Magic. That's the water-based voodoo gel stains from Dixie Belle. Okay, I'm just gonna throw in some streaks. So I'm loving how this one turned out. Can you see all that variation of color? Let's do this section here. Okay, so I got my rustic red on here. If you just jump it on, then I'm dipping my brush half in black, half in brown. Kind of dab it off just a little bit. And I'm just dragging the streaks from the Voodoo Gel stain in with that wet red paint. Now, if I want to get that real waxed look, so like darken the crevices, what I would do is I would come in here and I get more of the black than anything. I would get more of the black, just a very tiny bit of brown. Dab them off. And I would go in, I'm seeing which direction you can see. You can see this side right there. I would come in and just drag that black into that crevice here. Okay, so that is what it's gonna look like. Very rustic. Here is what the front looks like. So you can see that front wood. This is what we did. See how aged this look? Look at how boring this was. Okay, so see how the colors, see how they're kind of streaked together? That is the red with the Voodoo Gel stain. And just ages it and grunges it up. That's what it did look like. Now you can see both of them together. So, and then here is just where, and I can add a little water. If this is too strong in areas, I just add a little water and take my brush to it. And that will definitely kind of lighten and move those colors some more. But see, that is up here, this is the barn red and the Voodoo Gel stain mixed together for the streaky look. Okay, let me do the top real quick. I'll show you how fast this is. Okay, on the top, I'm just gonna use Voodoo Gel stains. I'm not going to use paint. But see this top? This back, it's got the original braces on it. Look at these old braces with the old original nails. I don't want to take this top off. Normally I take these tops off because they're usually screwed on. This has got the old original nails and they're all rusted, so I kind of like that. So I am going to stain around it. Normally I would remove this, but I'm going to stain around it. I'm going to show you, I'm going to stain this part. And I'm going to once again be dipping my brush half in the brown and half in the black. And the reason I'm not using the other brush is because I use the flat small. It's very narrow. I want a wider brush. So I'm using the premium chip brush. First thing I'm going to do, get my wood. This wood is thirsty. I'm going to get it wet. That's going to allow my stain to move evenly across my piece. It's not going to be grabbed more in one area than in another, so I'm going to get a more even finish. I'm going to dip my brush half in each. Okay, and see there? And I'm just going to drag it across that water. It already absorbed all that water. Let me get my brush wet then. This is such a thirsty piece. It's so dry. You see an angle. Okay, and I'm not worried about the fact that the stain has been sitting here for a minute because I'm using water. I'm not gonna get any stop and start marks. I can add water. If I do get a stop and start mark, like if I had a line from here to here, I'd spray it with water, take my brush across it, and it's gonna move it around. Once again, half brown, half black. Add water. I'm just gonna keep spritzing my brush. And I'm gonna go right here. See those streaks? I don't want it one solid color. I'm just dragging those colors together, mixing with water, because this is a water-based gel stain. Water is very important for me, I find, when using the Voodoo Gel stains. I get the best results when I use water. I'm able to move it. I don't have an area that is darker than another. Now this is, remember I have black on my brush, brown on my brush, black on my brush. I'm doing half and half. And just in it with water. And I'm dragging it across. And I can keep going. If my streaks are too strong and I don't want them that strong, I just go back and forth and work it in. But I want black and brown together. Now let's say you have, like, if you're working on wood and it's not as thirsty as this, and you don't like to have a strong line between your colors, like I said, mix it with some water, and you can move it and lighten it. So water is your friend when you're working with the stains. Now just know that when this dries, since I have so much water on it, it's gonna dry a little bit lighter color. Right now my wood is wet, my stain is wet, and you know wood always looks darker when it's wet. So you can come in here and dry brush to really give it that driftwood look. You can dry brush some of the gray up in smoke. You can dry brush some white in here. I'm not gonna do that. I can come back and do it afterwards. After this is dried, I can add more colors, but I wanna see what it's gonna look like with the red first. Okay, I'm just mixing with water. I'll pull you back so you can see the whole thing. But the gorgeous thing about this top, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's planked wood, and each plank is different. So I'm really loving that too. I just want this to look old and weathered. And I'm gonna stage it with a bunch of pots. Okay, a bunch of pots and gardening tools. But like I said, I can come back after this is dried, or even now when it's wet, but I don't want to. You can add other colors, streak other colors in here to make it more look like driftwood. I'm not going for driftwood, I'm going for the farmhouse. And it's water-based. This is so forgiving. There's no odor to it whatsoever. I cannot smell anything when I'm working with this. That's another great thing about the Voodoo Gel Stain. It's water-based. There's no odor. It's user-friendly. As soon as it dries, I can seal it. I can use any sealer I want. Isn't that pretty? That's a little dark right there. Just spray with some water and move it out. I have to do the front yet, but it's a little bit darker over here. Like I said, I just use my water and spread it out. And I can lighten it up. Okay? So, now you can see it. That's what it's gonna look like. See how aged that looked and grungy that looked with that nice top on it? Like I said, I still have to get this side. Give you a general idea what it's gonna look like. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's an easy process. I'm also going to be putting a video up real soon on how I sealed this with the how do you do hemp oil. Hemp oil is a great option, and it's an easy option for sealing paints. So I'll be putting that video up next, so make sure you're watching for that. And go ahead and click on that little bell down below and subscribe. That way you're notified every time I put up a new video. If you want to also follow me over on Facebook, I'm at AJ's Vintage Designs on Facebook, and I have a huge library of videos over there as well that you can binge watch for free, and that's about it. Okay, well, until next time, I hope you have a great day.